The 7 levels of battles in comics. Level 1, the raw fights. Colossus versus Juggernaut. In the world of mutants, pride can hit harder than any punch, and this barroom brawl proved it. The fight began the night Peter Rasputin, the gentle giant known as Colossus, broke Kitty Pryde's heart. Wolverine, never one for lectures, decided the kid needed a lesson in humility, so he took him to Harry's Hideaway, a quiet New York bar where heroes were supposed to cool off. Then the door opened, and Kane Marco, Juggernaut, walked in. Juggernaut was just grabbing a drink and trying to enjoy his night, but Colossus, still seething over his breakup and eager to prove something, picked the wrong time to test his ego. What followed was less of a superhero battle and more of a public demolition. Juggernaut slammed Colossus through walls, tables, and unlucky bystanders. Beer spilled, furniture shattered, and Wolverine just watched, arms crossed, eyes calm. The fight was brutal, but the lesson was clear. By the end, Colossus was on the floor, barely conscious, and Juggernaut just dusted himself off and left. No victory speech, no glory, just another reminder that in this world, strength means nothing without control. Colossus learned that the hard way, through fists, not words. Spawn versus Billy Kincaid. Some battles are about punishment. Al Simmons had already died once and come back as Spawn, a burned soul wrapped in Hell's armor. But nothing tested his humanity more than Billy Kincaid, a child murderer who had escaped justice through corruption. The police couldn't stop him, the courts didn't care, and the city had moved on. Spawn didn't. He stalked Kincaid through alleys and shadows, silent and unseen. There was no monologue, no flashy showdown, just methodical hunting. When Spawn finally cornered him, the comic didn't show a grand fight. What it showed instead was aftermath. Kincaid's body, hanging from the ceiling with popsicle sticks jammed into his flesh, a sick echo of how he'd lured his victims. That single page became one of the most infamous images in 90s comics. The fight was short, but its message lasted. This wasn't superhero justice. It was vengeance, unfiltered and merciless. Spawn's war was about punishing the people who didn't deserve another chance. It made readers question whether righteousness and revenge could ever really be separated. Thor versus Hulk. The god of thunder versus the green engine of destruction. Two forces built for one purpose, to see who could stand last. When Hulk rampaged across the land, there was only one being arrogant enough to face him head-on. Thor arrived, hammer in hand, ready to settle a challenge that never really ended. The issue gave readers everything they wanted. No politics, no speeches, just pages of raw power colliding. Every strike sent shockwaves through the ground. Thor swung Mjolnir with divine fury. Hulk responded with unrelenting rage. Trees splintered, the earth cracked, and the sky itself seemed to shake. It wasn't about good or evil, just primal will. The longer it went, the clearer it became that neither could break the other. Thor's godly strength met Hulk's limitless fury and perfect balance. When both finally paused, bruised and panting, there was no winner, just mutual respect buried under exhaustion. The readers had witnessed two legends test their limits and live to fight another day. Level 2, the Grudge matches. Batman versus Mutant Leader. By the time Bruce Wayne came out of retirement, Gotham had rotted. The mutant gang ruled the streets, led by a monster built like a tank and mean enough to back it up. Batman was older, slower, and still trying to prove he could keep up. The first time they met, it wasn't close. In a sewer fight that turned into a slaughter, the mutant leader handed Bruce one of the worst beatings of his career. Broken ribs, torn armor, blood everywhere. The gang watched their king humiliate the legend who'd once terrified criminals. Bruce barely survived, but the old detective didn't retreat. He studied. A few days later, he called the leader out again, but this time on his own terms. Under a full moon, in a pit of mud, surrounded by his enemy's gang, Batman walked in ready. No Batmobile, no gadgets, just timing, pressure, and precision. The mutant leader swung like a monster, but Bruce broke him down piece by piece. Elbow joints, kneecaps, throat strikes, surgical pain replacing brute force. When the fight ended, the gang's idol was in the dirt, his bones cracked, and their faith shattered. That moment brought Gotham back under the Bat's shadow. Bruce didn't win because of power, he won because the mission never ends. Age didn't matter, speed didn't matter. What mattered was control, and that's what he took back that night, one broken limb at a time. Wolverine versus Hulk. When the Canadian government needed someone to deal with the Hulk, they sent in a new weapon. Not a soldier, a wild card with claws, Wolverine. This was his first full appearance, and Marvel made sure readers felt the tension from the start. The setting, the Canadian wilderness. The atmosphere, pure chaos. Hulk was already locked in a brawl with the Wendigo when Wolverine jumped in. The fight was fast, vicious, and loud. Wolverine darted around Hulk like a predator testing prey. The claws tore skin. Hulk's fists shook trees. Every move felt reckless, primal, and personal. Hulk's strength was unmatched, but but Wolverine's savagery made him unpredictable. Then the Wendigo re-entered, and the three-way melee tore the forest apart. In the end, no one truly won. Hulk and Wendigo clashed into the distance, leaving Wolverine standing in the ruins, tired, furious, and unforgettable. For readers, this was the moment they realized what kind of fighter Wolverine was. Not a polished hero or a strategic thinker, just an animal with a code, a short temper, and a healing factor that kept him in every fight longer than anyone else could survive. Bane versus Batman. The night Gotham broke started long before the fight itself. Bane had studied Batman for months. He released every criminal from Arkham Asylum, forcing Bruce to chase them one by one across the city until he was running on fumes. By the time Bane finally came to Wayne Manor, Bruce was a ghost of himself. The house that once symbolized safety turned into a battlefield. Bane cornered him in the Batcave, surrounded by memories of every battle he'd ever fought. The dialogue was short, the violence wasn't. Bane overpowered him with surgical efficiency, grabbing, lifting, and slamming him into stone. Bruce tried every move he had left: smoke pellets, kicks, desperation. None of it worked. Bane caught him by the throat, raised him high, and delivered the most iconic, spine-breaking move in comic history. The image of Batman's body folding under Bane's strength is still burned into pop culture. No gadgets, no last-second escape, just a man brought to his limit by someone who planned every detail. Gotham fell, and the mantle passed on temporarily to Azrael. But even broken, Bruce's defeat wasn't failure. It was a transition. The symbol had cracked, but the idea survived. Level 3. The Power Clashes. Superman versus Doomsday. When Doomsday first appeared, no one understood what he was. A hulking figure wrapped in containment gear, breaking through rocks step by step. No words, no purpose, just destruction. The Justice League tried to stop him. Blue Beetle, Guy Gardner, Booster Gold, but every hit only made him angrier. By the time Superman arrived, half the League was unconscious. What followed was one of the most brutal battles ever printed in a mainstream comic. Every punch between them read like a thunderclap. Metropolis became the arena, and nothing stayed standing for long. Doomsday threw cars, crushed concrete, and roared through the skyline. Superman countered with every ounce of his strength, holding back only enough to protect civilians. Panel after panel, they tore through blocks of the city, the artwork stripped down to heavy ink lines and raw impact. Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen watched from the street, documenting history as it unfolded. By the final pages, Superman's cape was shredded, his knuckles bleeding. Doomsday lunged for one last strike, and Superman met him head-on. The double-page spread showed the shockwave that ended them both. Superman collapsed in Lois's arms, eyes closed, city silent. It was the death of certainty. Readers around the world saw the impossible happen. A godlike figure fell, and comics were never the same after that. World War Hulk versus Sentry. When Bruce Banner came back to Earth after being exiled into space, he was past angry. The Illuminati, the group that sent him away, had destroyed his world, killed his people, and now he wanted retribution. He fought Iron Man, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, everyone who stood in his way. When it seemed no one could stop him, one last door opened: the Sentry. Robert Reynolds was the only person alive who could match Hulk's power output. The two shared a complicated friendship, built on understanding the chaos inside them. When Sentry finally joined the fight, the air itself seemed to vibrate. Golden energy collided with green fury, shaking Manhattan. Their punches lit up the skyline, vaporizing debris in the shockwaves. Every strike turned sound into pressure, light into fire. Buildings melted, streets cracked, and energy poured out of both until they burned through their own limits. When the storm ended, neither monster remained, just two exhausted men lying in the rubble: Bruce Banner and Robert Reynolds. No masks, no power. Hulk finally said he'd had enough. The war ended not with victory, but with surrender. That issue showed the cost of power stripped of purpose. When you reach the top of the mountain, there's nowhere left to swing. Darkseid versus Anti-Monitor. When universes start dying, the only things left to fight are gods. The Anti-Monitor had already consumed countless worlds, feeding on the energy of reality itself. His shadow armies wiped out dimensions like pages turning to ash. The heroes of every Earth gathered, desperate for a plan. The final move belonged to Apocalypse. Darkseid entered the war through technology and willpower. He didn't step onto the battlefield. He reached across dimensions. While the Anti-Monitor prepared to erase the last remaining worlds, Darkseid's Omega beams tore through the void, burning straight into his essence. The attack didn't kill him instantly, but it shifted the fight. The Anti-Monitor, weakened and cornered, faced a combined assault from Earth's defenders and fell in the final explosion of matter and antimatter. That moment was about survival at a scale too large for heroes to grasp. Darkseid never fought for anyone but himself, yet his interference saved existence for reasons known only to him. The panels closed with silence, showing a multiverse rebuilt but forever changed. Power at this level doesn't end in triumph. It ends in quiet aftermath. Level 4. The Ideological Duels. Captain America versus Iron Man. When heroes start fighting for principles instead of people, the world burns fast. The Superhuman Registration Act split the Marvel Universe in half, forcing everyone to pick a side. Tony Stark wanted order, names registered, powers accountable. Steve Rogers saw it as control. What began as a debate turned into a civil war that shredded friendships, cities, and ideals. The final showdown hit the streets of Manhattan. Both sides were exhausted, their alliances barely holding together. Spider-Man, Daredevil, Luke Cage, and others all scattered across the battlefield, while Iron Man and Cap crashed through the skyline like falling meteors. Stark's armor cracked, Cap's shield dented, and neither man slowed down. Every punch carried years of trust breaking apart. When Cap finally overpowered him, the fight didn't end with a victory, just clarity. Civilians rushed in, holding him back, shouting at the chaos around them. Cap looked around and saw what they had become. Soldiers destroying the very streets they'd sworn to protect. He dropped the shield and surrendered. No speech, no redemption arc, just silence and handcuffs. That page ended the war and left everyone questioning what heroism meant when ideology replaces empathy. Superman versus Shazam. In a future where old heroes had retired and new ones played God, chaos reigned. Superman came back to restore order, but not everyone agreed with his way of doing it. Lex Luthor found his perfect counterweight in Billy Batson, Shazam, the man-child who could match Superman blow for blow. Manipulated by mind control, Billy became Luthor's weapon, forcing the two icons into a battle no one wanted. The fight tore through the skies above a nuclear strike zone. Lightning clashed with heat vision, thunder met sunlight. Each hit carried moral weight, innocence versus experience, free will against manipulation. Superman begged him to stop, but Billy's mind was fractured. He shouted his magic word again and again, lightning splitting the clouds like divine judgment. When Superman finally broke Luthor's control, Billy was left to make the hardest decision of all. A bomb was falling toward the battlefield, one that could wipe out every hero and villain alive. Billy stopped fighting, whispered Shazam one last time, and flew upward, straight into the explosion. The detonation erased him completely, saving everyone else. That choice, quiet and absolute, ended the war and left Superman standing in shock. It was the purest act of humanity from a man powered by gods. Wonder Woman versus Aquaman. Before the timeline fractured, they were allies. In the Flashpoint world, they were executioners. Diana led the Amazons, Arthur ruled Atlantis, and a single diplomatic betrayal turned their relationship into a full-scale world war. Queen Mara's death, killed by Wonder Woman's hand, became the spark. What followed was a global apocalypse disguised as a grudge match. The two empires turned Europe into a graveyard. Themyscira's warriors rode giant beasts across London's ruins, while Atlantean armies flooded entire cities. Aquaman unleashed tidal waves that wiped out millions, and Wonder Woman's forces retaliated with magical weapons drawn from Greek gods. The two rulers met on the battlefield, each one drenched in the consequences of their pride. Their duel was short but devastating. Swords clashed underwater, tridents shattered shields, and the ocean turned red. Neither side backed down until the Flash's desperate attempt to reset the timeline rewound the war entirely. The world disappeared in blinding light, erasing the carnage but not the memory. That story became one of DC's darkest alternate realities, not because of who won, but because of how much both were willing to lose to prove they were right. Level 5, the Team Wars. Avengers versus X-Men. The Phoenix Force had returned to Earth, and everyone was terrified of what it meant. For the X-Men, it was salvation, the key to restoring mutant kind. For the Avengers, it was extinction waiting to happen. The fight began as a race to control hope and ended as a full-scale war that ripped through continents. By the time the final issue hit, the Phoenix had already fractured and possessed 5 mutants: Cyclops, Emma Frost, Magic, Namor, and Colossus. Power corrupted fast, and by the end, only Cyclops remained, consumed completely. The world watched him turn into Dark Phoenix, his mind clouded by pure cosmic fire. The Avengers and the remaining X-Men stormed Utopia for one last stand. Every hero you could name was there. Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Wolverine, Storm, piling into a desperate push. The panels went wide, filled with flames and broken landscapes. Hope Summers and Scarlet Witch fought side by side, blending chaos magic and mutant energy. Cyclops lashed out, screaming that the world didn't deserve peace. Then came the final strike. Hope absorbed the Phoenix's energy with Wanda's help and burned it out of existence, scattering its essence back into the cosmos. The victory wasn't clean. Cyclops was left broken, mutants were divided, and trust between teams vanished. The Phoenix saved the mutant race, but at the cost of everything else. Civil War, mass melee. The Superhuman Registration Act split entire armies of heroes. On one side stood Iron Man and the pro-registration team, on the other, Captain America and the underground resistance. The final clash in Manhattan looked like the apocalypse, dressed in spandex. Heroes flooded the streets: Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, the Young Avengers, even villains recruited to enforce order. Iron Man's tech-heavy army squared off against Cap's guerrilla strike team. The first punch came from Hercules, smashing through a sentinel. Then the chaos began. Buildings crumbled, cars flipped, and civilians screamed as the city turned into a war zone. Cap and Iron Man found each other in the wreckage. The fight was personal, brutal, and fast. Iron Man's armor split under Cap's shield. Cap's mask cracked under Iron Man's fists. Every page carried exhaustion. When Cap finally pinned him down, police officers pulled him off. Regular people, not heroes. They weren't cheering, they were terrified. Cap looked around and saw the damage. His cause had swallowed the city whole. He dropped his shield and surrendered, just like he had in his one-on-one fight with Tony earlier. The battle ended not in triumph, but realization. The war had no winners, only survivors. Justice League vs. Avengers, JLA Avengers number 2, 2003. It took decades for DC and Marvel to pull this off. Two universes colliding for the biggest crossover in comic history. The setup was cosmic chess. The Grandmaster and Krona forced both teams to collect powerful artifacts scattered across dimensions. What followed was a war between legends. The League's roster, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, met the Avengers lineup, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, Hawkeye, and the Vision. Every page overflowed with dream matchups. Superman traded blows with Thor, their battle-leveling landscapes. Batman studied Captain America mid-fight, analyzing every move like a scientist watching a storm. The rest clashed around them in chaos, magic colliding with technology, gods clashing with mortals. It wasn't simple aggression. Both sides thought they were fighting for survival. When they finally realized they were being manipulated, the fighting stopped, replaced by grudging respect. Superman carried both shields, his own and Cap's, into the next issue as a sign of alliance. The story ended with both teams joining forces to save both realities from collapsing, sealing the crossover as one of the most iconic team-ups ever printed. Level 6. The God Conflicts. God Emperor Doom vs. Thanos. On Battleworld, the laws of power were rewritten. Dr. Doom had taken the Beyonder's power for himself, becoming God Emperor Doom, a ruler worshipped as divine, feared as absolute. His throne sat over a world pieced together from fragments of destroyed realities, and no one dared challenge him until Thanos walked in. Thanos approached Doom without armor, without the Infinity Gauntlet, just arrogance and intent. The Mad Titan stood before the White Throne in the heart of Castle Doom and declared that no god was worthy but himself. Doom didn't move. The air was silent. Then he reached forward and crushed Thanos' skull with one hand. The body fell like a statue toppling from its pedestal. No fight, no theatrics, just a god reminding everyone who was truly in control. That moment defined the hierarchy of Marvel's cosmic order. Thanos had faced Celestials, eternity, and death itself, but Doom had stolen omnipotence and forged a world in his own image. The death was symbolic. It showed that in Secret Wars, raw ambition wasn't enough. You needed purpose, structure, and vision. And Doom had all three carved into the bones of reality itself. Superman vs. Thor. When universes collide, egos do too. The Justice League and Avengers crossover gave fans every dream battle they'd ever imagined, but none hit harder than Superman versus Thor. Both were champions of their worlds, both embodiments of impossible power, and when they met, the sky nearly split in half. The fight began during the Artifact War when both teams believed the other threatened their existence. Superman charged first, hammering Thor across a cityscape drawn with thunderclouds and shattered debris. Thor responded with Mjolnir, unleashing lightning that turned night into fire. The impact cracked mountains. What made the moment legendary was its weight. Superman fought through godly energy with Mjolnir's lightning wrapping around him like chains. Then, he caught the hammer mid-strike and swung it back, a moment that made readers freeze. One hit sent Thor sprawling into the dirt, unconscious. Superman stood tall, panting, battered, but still holding Mjolnir. The narration quietly noted that it took everything he had. He admitted that Thor had pushed him to his limits, a rare confession from the Man of Steel. That single panel became one of the defining crossover images in comic history. Two gods meeting as equals, both humbled by the outcome. Hope Summers and Scarlet Witch versus the Phoenix Force. When the Phoenix finally consumed Cyclops and tore across Earth, there was no one left who could stop it, except Hope Summers, the mutant messiah. Trained her whole life for this moment, she stood beside Scarlet Witch as reality itself burned around them. The two unleashed everything they had. Wanda's chaos magic met Hope's Phoenix-fueled energy, creating a storm of color that erased entire panels in white light. Cyclops fought like a living sun, scorching the air with energy beams strong enough to melt steel. The planet trembled under him, cities shattering in the crossfire. Hope didn't back down. Using Wanda's guidance, she absorbed the Phoenix itself, fire swirling around her like molten wings. Together, they released it into the cosmos, restoring what had been destroyed and rekindling the spark of mutant life across Earth. The fire that once annihilated worlds now reignited an entire species. Afterward, Hope fell unconscious, her body glowing with fading embers. The battle ended not with victory, but balance restored. For years, mutants had been nearly extinct. That day, through two women standing shoulder to shoulder, the flame returned. Level 7. The Eternal Rivalries. Batman vs. Superman. Two legends, one breaking point. Gotham's vigilante and Metropolis's god collided in a fight that reshaped the meaning of superhero conflict. After years of tension, the US government ordered Superman to stop Batman, now older, grittier, and unwilling to stand down. Gotham had become his war zone, and he refused to let anyone, not even Superman, dictate how he protected it. The fight took place in the heart of Crime Alley. Rain poured, mud and blood mixed under their boots. Batman had prepared everything: armored suit, kryptonite gas, electromagnetic traps, even help from Green Arrow. Superman approached like a walking nuke, trying to reason with him one last time, but Bruce was past negotiation. Every punch cracked concrete. Superman tore through steel. Batman countered with gadgets designed for one goal: to make a god bleed. When Superman's strength faltered under the kryptonite, Bruce drove his metal fist straight into his face. Then, in one of the most famous moments in comic history, he held Superman by the collar and told him to remember who beat him. Moments later, Bruce's heart stopped. The fight ended with Superman standing over what he thought was a corpse, unaware Bruce had faked his death. Two philosophies collided that night: order versus autonomy, faith versus willpower, and neither side truly won. Flash versus Reverse Flash. The Flash's greatest enemy is time. Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, dedicated his life to tormenting Barry Allen by destroying everything he loved. When Barry woke up in the Flashpoint timeline, a twisted world where everything had gone wrong, it all traced back to Thawne. The final confrontation unfolded as time collapsed around them. Thawne revealed the truth. Barry himself had broken the timeline trying to save his mother, and Thawne was there to savor the irony. He moved at impossible speed, red lightning clashing with yellow as the two raced through a world unraveling. The art blurred as if the panels couldn't keep up with them. Barry fought through grief and guilt, but Thawne stayed ahead, taunting him at every turn. Just when it seemed hopeless, Thomas Wayne, Batman in this reality, stabbed Thawne through the chest, giving Barry a chance to fix everything. Barry ran back into the Speed Force, resetting history at the cost of his memories. Thawne's body hit the ground lifeless for now, but his laugh still echoed across time. Every Flash story since has carried the weight of that rivalry, a reminder that no matter how fast Barry runs, Thawne is always somewhere behind him. Batman vs. Joker. No rivalry defines comics like this one. Batman and the Joker are two sides of the same broken coin. In Endgame, the Joker returned deadlier than ever, claiming to have discovered immortality through a substance called Dionysium. He unleashed a virus across Gotham that drove citizens into homicidal frenzy, forcing Batman into a fight he couldn't walk away from. Their final battle happened deep beneath Gotham in the caverns that formed the city's foundations. Joker taunted Bruce with every line, dancing through the blood and chaos like it was theater. Both men were wounded, poisoned, and exhausted. Batman tackled Joker as the cave collapsed around them, both refusing to stop even as the city above them burned. In their last moments, Bruce used the same Dionysium to ensure Gotham would live, knowing it would kill them both. The final panel showed them lying side by side, bleeding out, laughing as the cave filled with rubble. Days later, their bodies were gone, presumed dead, but both returned months later, reborn in different ways. That story closed a circle that had lasted decades. The Joker finally forced Batman to face the cost of his mission, and Batman finally accepted that he could never destroy the Joker without destroying himself. So, which of these comic battles do you think deserves a level of its own? Comment down below as you leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.